What's an American issue you are too European to understand? Obligatory. I am an American but work remotely for a European country. My European colleagues cannot wrap their heads around the fact that most Americans do not have employment contracts. Recently I had a conversation with a colleague and I could see her visibly glitch after she made a comment about something being in my employment contract, and I told her that I don't have one. I was originally hired by our US office. I interviewed and was eventually offered the job verbally. The company then sent me an offer letter that outlined starting salary, number of vacation days 10 days, another thing that surprised my EU colleagues, and basic benefits. We negotiated, finalized numbers, salary, and I got a revised letter. Through a number of circumstances I was transferred to our home office in Europe. My manager is there, my team is there, etc., and I work remotely from the US. Over the years I've negotiated raises and more vacation time through my managers and our CEO, but don't have a contract. The offer letter is not a contract. In the US, most of us are employees at will, which means that we can be terminated at any time as long as it's not a discriminatory reason. On the flip side, we can quit whenever we want, though it's traditional to give at least a 2 weeks notice. Black Friday. Every time I see a video about it I cringe. The behavior depicted is always utterly disgusting and so unbelievably primal. Over here we have a prolonged period where extreme sales are allowed, and even though there's more shoppers than normal, I can't recall people being desperate for a stupid discounted item. School debts. A lot of this had to do with the federal government getting into the student loan business. They will basically give a loan to anyone with a pulse, regardless of what they're majoring in or how long they're going to school for. In turn, colleges raised their tuition costs because they knew that the government would foot the bill. Before the government got involved, college was actually affordable. Asian here, but why wear shoes inside your homes? I live in Arizona. Scorpions is why. Why do you pay the taxes yourself? It's way easier to have it done for you by your state, country, since you have to pay anyway. Tax companies lobbied the government so that the IRS department in charge of taxes cannot do them for us. Tax companies are businesses that sell software that help you to fill out your tax return or offer services to do your taxes for you. The double moral when it comes to sex and sexuality. $50K for a university while average American earns around $40K bucks. Why the Kardashians are even close to popular at all? Don't worry, that confuses us Americans also. People literally dying because they cannot afford to pay for their insulin anymore. Your bathrooms. What idiot thought it was okay to have very small doors with gaps on all sides in every stall? How are you supposed to quietly poop and stink and fart without everyone seeing you? I can understand why you are so afraid of unisex bathrooms. It's so you can see criminals coming so you can shoot them with your gun. Pew pew poo poo pew pew. ISPs actually having data caps on wired connections in 2019. Drinking tap water. I'm used to drinking tap water all day. I never buy water since it's the same as tap water. Why the healthcare system hasn't caused literal riots yet? I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that our health insurance is largely tied to our jobs. The majority of Americans get their health insurance from their employer. If you lose your job, you lose your health insurance. If you miss a bunch of work to demonstrate, protest, riot, you'll lose your job and insurance. Hell, in a lot of places, if you get arrested at a protest, riot, you could lose your job and insurance just because you got arrested. The fact that a town with 30,000 inhabitants is small. I mean, when you have cities across the country with well over 1 million people, 30K seems pretty small. Why they use other measuring units instead of the international ones? Why does Ross, the largest friend, not simply eat the other friends? The lack of paid maternity leave. The thought of having to hand my children to strangers and go back to work weeks after giving birth. Nobody seems enraged about what that must do to babies and mothers. Worrying about medical bills. I mean, I cannot comprehend how simple operations will end up costing 5, 6 digits. It literally makes no sense. Everyone must have their own vehicle. For a leading first world country, how can it be that public transport isn't getting the attention it deserves? Police brutality. Every day I hear another innocent person being killed by police. Why aren't Americans putting these cops to jail for murder? In Europe, even firing a warning shot is taken super seriously. The McDonald's ice cream machine being broken. These king-size drinks in fast food joints. Who can drink that much? My bet is that a ton of these differences can be explained by the percentage of Americans who live in rural areas relative to the percentage of Europeans living in rural areas in any given country. There are twice as many people in Europe, in a land area that's about the same size as the US. People live in closer proximity to other people. Huge portions of the American population live in rural areas. Celebrate that fact, and have more conservative values and opinions associated with living in rural areas. Rural Europeans aren't less conservative than rural Americans. They just make up a smaller portion of the population and are relatively less isolated. Drinking at age 21. I mean, for real, I live in Austria and the legal drinking age here is 16. You know what's weird to me? Drinking is 21, sex is 18, but joining the military is 17, and I believe some states let you drive at 16. Like, pick one. Why do you only have two political parties in power that alternate each other? Sticking stuff into laws that have nothing to do with law itself. You'd have law on traffic safety and somebody would stick in passage rider, I believe they are called, that prohibits abortion without consent of the father. I mean, how can you even stick a clause that has nothing to do with actual topic? That whole pledging allegiance to the flag thing, that's just so weird to us. If Germany started doing it, everyone would be shitting their pants. Ah shit, here we go again. Poland. Anything that happens in high school, really. If you're going by our films, those are full of exaggerated stereotypes. Real high schools rarely resemble the movies. For one, the teenagers attending are way less hot in reality. Having to register for voting. What? Why don't you just get a letter at home, stating you only need that letter and an ID, show up here or there on that day and that's it? It looks cheaper but it ain't. I'm surprised nobody has mentioned the prison population. Punishment is the mindset of the prison system. The threat of prison time is supposed to stop people from committing crime, and treats it as solely a voluntary choice by someone who intends to harm another or society. The logic therefore means rehabilitation is useless, and harsh consequences have to be used to prevent crime. This reflects the idea of personal responsibility in all areas of life, which is a major tenet of modern American philosophy. The end result is high recidivism of criminal by circumstances, lack of treatment of mentally ill criminals, and continuing support of mandatory minimum sentences as well as execution. Not rioting or demonstrating. I mean, I'm French, so the bias is big here. American here. I have a British friend who didn't understand why most Americans prefer coffee as opposed to tea. We threw the tea into the harbor. How is the death penalty justified when it doesn't make even a dent in the prison population? It doesn't save money because of the necessary. It doesn't act as a deterrent because criminal psychology and basic common sense says that people who commit serious crimes do not believe they will be caught and do not weigh life sentences against capital punishment. Murder-suicide is quite popular. Most of the world has abolished or is in the process of abolishing it, leaving pretty much only the worst names like North Korea, Saudi Arabia and China. I've lived in the US for 30+ years and I still don't understand the fraternity-sorority system. I was in one and I still don't understand how only 36% of Americans have a passport. People keep talking about the size of the country, but the real answer is cost. If you don't live within a couple driving hours of Canada or Mexico, you are taking a flight. A flight to those countries is a few $100s. If you want to go across the Atlantic or Pacific or to South America, you're closer to the thousands or well into the thousands, especially with family. I live on the East Coast, and a few years ago it cost me around $1,300 to fly to Germany. Amazingly, that was $100 cheaper than flying across the US to California. Flights are expensive and getting to other countries takes a long time. The majority of Americans are 1 to 2 paychecks away from being completely broke. Not a lot of people save up for vacations that cost thousands of dollars, especially when they can just drive to a destination in country for a lot less. Lunch debt. Why is that a thing? Why are the children being held accountable and unable to graduate? It's a goddamn lunch. In Norway we pay a deposit every time we buy soft drinks, beer, etc., and get that money refunded when we return the empty bottles back to the store. Why don't you have that? I don't get it. It's good for the environment, and prevents people from just tossing them around everywhere. American work culture. Euro here. I have direct experience of working in high-tech office environment. US folk arrive in early and leave late. But productivity is rubbish. People seem to spend so much time wandering the corridors. In our 37.5 hours we easily did as much as the US 50 to minus 60 hours. We figured it was all about being seen to be a hard worker as job security was so flimsy. American work culture. Euro here. I have direct experience of working in high-tech office environment. US folk arrive in early and leave late. But productivity is rubbish. People seem to spend so much time wandering the corridors. In our 37.5 hours we easily did as much as the US 50 to minus 60 hours. We figured it was all about being seen to be a hard worker as job security was so flimsy. American here. At a previous job, I would typically work from home 2 days a week, and go into work around 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. I had a 90-minute drive each way. I would then leave work around 5 p.m. Everyone else would go in at 8:30 a.m. and leave around 6 p.m. I was the only software developer, but would knock out tickets left and right, bug fixes, hot patches, new features, report build-outs for the BA folks, everything. I was easily doing the job of 3 or 4 developers, in addition to being on call the 24th of July 365 to ensure that nightly batch processes ran correctly, otherwise business could not proceed as normal the next morning. I still got constant reprimands for not being in the office or coming in late, leaving early. So, I started coming in by 9 a.m. and leaving at 6 p.m. My productivity dropped drastically and I stopped being on call on Friday nights and Saturdays as a result of being more tired, as my commute was now much longer, usually 120 minutes each way, due to my commute now being smack dab in the middle of rush hour. I am of the opinion that a shorter and/or flexible work culture leads to greater worker productivity, as the workers are more focused and relaxed. Why pay $500 just to ride the wee-woo car? The obsession with and worship of your military. I once got "thank you for your service, Ed." I was in DC at the time, on government business. German government business. It was a German army uniform, with a German flag. The person in question couldn't name that flag. They thought the funky camo meant we were some sort of high-speed, low-drag special forces. Technically we are, but it's less kicking down doors and more riding the short bus kind of special. Can someone in Europe or Germany specifically tell me how David Hasselhoff became so famous there after a so-so run in the States? He had a concert in Germany at the time the wall fell, and now Hasselhoff brought down the wall is used as a joke. As I've not seen it yet. Tipping culture. It's insane to me that in America, you're some social pariah for not giving a tip, because the workers need it to live but haven't thought him, instead of giving them bonuses. Why don't we have a system where they're paid a fair wage by the bosses? I mean, here in the UK we tip, but it's usually around 10% for very good service. In America it seems like 20% is the default for anything, and you have to do it or you can't afford to eat out, which to me means it isn't a tip. 1. Where are the streetlights in mostly part of the neighborhoods? At least here in SD. Have a walk after sunset is risky cause is pretty dark. 2 cars passing you in highway by the right line. 3 driving with 16 years old. Voting with 18 years old, but not being able to drink until 21 years old. Crazy. If cars are passing you on the right, it's because you're slow. Why pay for the bigger soda cup if there are free refills for the small? Why are you incapable of building bathroom stalls without a 5 cm gap in it? For everyone asking what 5 cm is, it is roughly 2 inches or 0.166667 feet in your fantastic way of measuring things.